Welcome to TezTalks Radio. I'm your host, Marissa True, and today I'm joined by Michael Beets, the mind behind Here and Now, an immersive experiences platform, part of which is on Tezos. So, hi, Michael. How are you today?
Yeah, good. Great to chat.
So, before we dig into your experience within the Web3 world, I want to learn more about your background as a director in immersive experiences and in live cinema. So, what does that mean in practice?
Yeah, I suppose I'm most interested in, I wouldn't say events, but I would say kind of bringing people together through experiences. I think that's something that I really enjoy doing, whether it be a film or a virtual experience. I love taking people on little journeys that happen in a short specific time. That exist, over a day or 2 days, and kind of moving on to the next thing straight after that. I don't like long drawn out projects. I like to create something that exists and then it doesn't, and then I'm sort of on to the next thing. But really, when it comes down to it, it's how can you take an audience on a journey within an experience, and on top of that, to do things differently. I get bored quick, and I like to challenge myself. And I think a lot of that comes with my interest in storytelling and technology, and a lot of things I do blends those worlds together, and sort of emerging tech and also traditional sort of forms of storytelling, and just mashing them up and seeing what I can do with it.
So how did all of those forms of experimentation eventually lead you down the path of Web3 and then eventually Tezos?
Oh, it's a long. I feel like it's a long journey. I mean, it has, as I say, the same for most people. It happened during COVID. I had about 3 or 4 projects that were doing really well and getting quite a lot of exposure. And we're hitting there were films, short film, a live cinema project, and then also an interactive virtual experience. And they were all kind of confirmed for these amazing festivals, and it was going to be a year of kind of traveling the world and and taking these projects I made and meet people and collaborate and kind of start talking about future projects. It was a really exciting sort of year. And I spent 3 years previously making all these projects. So and then COVID came, and basically everything was cancelled. So all these projects sort of got put on hold. So I was thinking, how could I pivot with the projects that I made? How can I basically kind of use them to create sort of find new audiences online? And then so basically that's kind of how I started thinking about Web3. I have a friend who did really well in Web3. His name's Giant Swan, and I watched him sort of just go on this meteoric rise as an artist. And that's kind of when I first heard about NFTs, I suppose. And I started experimenting with him. All his interest in it got me interested, and then I kind of just threw some things at a wall, and some things stuck, and met a bunch of people, and then just kept making things. Really, I mean, it's obviously a lot more nuanced than that, but I think it just comes down to, I mean, I like to experiment, and Web3 really is a great playground for that.
So given your background, your style of work introduces a lot more, I guess, technical complexity or more complex media into the NFT space. Like when it really took off, we were still dealing with JPEGs. And so when you talk about bridging that gap from JPEGs to immersive digital experiences, it's quite the leap. So what did early experimentation look like to you?
Yeah, the first thing that I ever launched was in Tezos, which was a virtual experience. But it's funny because it's not necessarily connected to the blockchain, right? Like the experiences live on servers, they're not on chain. That would be really difficult to do if the whole experience was unchanged because of the size, the size of the project. But I think, I suppose I'm kind of interested in at the end of the day, kind of like I was looking at NFTs and going, everyone's holding them in these wallets, and they're living there, and they're existing there, and they're living on these platforms, and for most of the time, it's living on Twitter. Um, and I found it really interesting because people are buying these things and they're purchasing them, they're spending money on it, and then they're kind of just sitting in these wallets. And kind of the experience of that felt quite cold in terms of clicking this button and then receiving it. So I suppose that's kind of where it started. I was like, how can you take an artwork and collaborate with an artist to create a sort of more meaningful experience around the process of experiencing the art and then also buying the art? So the first experience really was structured around that. It was structured around creating an experience, working with a bunch of artists, taking their artwork and then designing worlds and spaces around the artwork so it all connects. So people can kind of go on this journey, visit these rooms, these experiences, see the artwork, and kind of, you're a little bit more connected to the experience of both witnessing it and purchasing it, either one, whichever journey that takes. Just witnessing it is also important, I think, without the need to buy all the time. So really that was kind of where the interest of creating a virtual experience came from. And it's funny, in the first experience I created, there's a plaque on the wall when you first walk in. The first door opens and there's a plaque on the wall, and it was kind of a throwaway thing I wrote, just kind of as a sort of a mission statement for the experience almost, and it said something along the lines of, I promise to, or my ambition with these experiences is to make you feel nostalgic and connected to the things that exist in your wallet. And I think that statement, which I kind of butchered, is more or less everything that we've done. I think, especially with Joe now, that we've done for 3 years now, I feel like that's it's almost like become a motto. But I think that's why people enjoy the experiences, is because, to bring it back around, it's because they really do offer a different way of experiencing art.
I do think the warmth of that connection to, I guess, a piece of digital media isn't necessarily just confined to the NFT space. It goes to general digital art. And so building that emotional connection, I think, has long been desired. But as you began interacting with Tezos, I'm sure you sort of stumbled across the community and the nostalgia and that sense of warmth just by virtue of the people you were interacting with. So talk to me about, like, I guess, evolution, or how you define a home within the Tezos community for your work, and how you use that to bridge into the here and now experience.
Yeah, I don't think I'd still be here if it wasn't for the sort of support, that the first experiment we did. And they've been to everything, collected so much, and so I think that's a major part of this. Is that, and I think that's true for a few people, is that you're not just creating things for yourself, right? You've actually kind of found an audience, and I take that personally. I take that very seriously. It's sort of it's the benchmarks for everything I do, and also connects to why we make these things, as the end of the day, for an audience. And they've been super supportive of the project for a while now, and then we've obviously built new audiences along the way. I mean, if you speak about sort of the community side of things, I think that's the thing that really attracted me to Tezos specifically. Was the sort of early Hypnotic days, which were really sort of rebellious. Everyone was just experimenting, and you really got a sense of the kind of art movement that was happening, and it was really exciting. Half of the stuff didn't work, which was great for me, because half the stuff I was making wasn't working either, because I didn't know how the blockchain worked back then. So it was really kind of everyone coming together and helping each other to figure things out. And I'd say the remnants of what happened in those first couple months of Hypnotic have completely decided the sort of trajectory of of how we want the space, especially Tezos, to be. People, a lot of us still hold on to that kind of spirit, even though it was years ago, since things sort of things since the book went down. So, I think those early days really set up a sort of expectation of what the community wants and what the community expects from each other, and I think those values have been really important, and also have kind of driven a lot of what I've done, especially with Here and Now.
Yeah, I think the early days of Yook very much demonstrated that there was this collective experimentation. There were no expectations. It wasn't supposed to be refined. It wasn't about finesse. It was just about creativity being thrown at a wall and to see what sticks, sort of thing. And I agree with you that it did sort of set the trajectory for Tezos in a major way. But from your standpoint, as someone who's been invested in this ecosystem for so many years, in your view, how has that space actually evolved over the last 3-4 years or so in your own experience?
Yeah, I feel like the evolution has been interesting. Like if I look at where things are now, the art sounds strange, but it's gotten a little bit more serious, which is expected, right? Like there's more expectations. There's people want a little bit more out of it. People look at it as a kind of like a valid way of living in terms of finance and living off your art. So I think it's a little bit more serious in that regard. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that could be quite a positive thing. Because also I feel like artists are evolving and maturing, understanding markets a little bit more, and with that comes expectations. I think platforms are become more art focused, possibly falling into sort of sterile way of looking at art. I think that can also be an issue. As we're trying to become a little more art focused, we tend to, I think, lose that experimentation, right? Because we're kind of falling into these kind of traps of what the expectation of and how art should be experienced, or how we talk about art. These kind of languages that have been formed for so long, I feel like falling back into that a little bit. So I mean, personally, I'd love for people just to experiment a little bit more, but yeah, it's not a bad thing. It's just an evolution of the space. I think it's not necessarily so much that revolt. It's perhaps a little bit more about sustainability.
Right. So the thing that really carved out the Tezos niche of its art community was the fact that it was so offbeat with the conventional art world. So the risk in it maturing is it potentially conforming to old standards that ultimately didn't serve these independent artists to begin with. And so we sort of might cause a bit of attrition in sort of the artists who begin to make names or build their profiles within this space. Is that generally what you're getting at?
I mean, for sure. I think let's just copy your answer and just lay them, lip sync it over my mouth. It would be weird, but I feel like that's probably a better answer. But yeah, exactly. It's I don't know, like and it's funny because the more that happens, the more I feel like people like me want to find alternatives. I'm not talking about Tezos, I'm just talking about the way you present things, right? And how you get people to see your things anymore. So yeah, I think it's like how can you? I'm always interested in how can you subvert things a little bit and challenge people and challenge the experience of people, because the other day, like, that's kind of my business, right? Like, I don't create websites or platforms for people to come buy things. Like that's just not anywhere near my skill set. But what I do and what is really important to me is to surprise people. And if people, come to a here and now experience and it's like the last experience, then people aren't going to come back. And that's the same for anyone who puts on events, anyone who creates a film, or even an artist who's creating artwork. I feel like you always want to surprise people, no matter how subtle or obvious that is. I think you can always find meaning and surprising people. So yeah, I suppose that's kind of like where my thinking is we've become so we're falling into similar expectations. So like, how can we now really twist things and surprise people again and bring them back into the space with kind of large amounts of experimentation.
So then, in terms of how this all translates to what you've created in here and now, and infusing this surprise and delight and sort of this breaking the mold sort of ethos behind all of it. Can you tell me a bit more of, the motivation behind the project, the mission that drives it, and what it's all about? Because I do know it's in its sixth and final edition, so there's a lot of previous material to dig through. But what's I guess, the common theme that runs through the entire project?
Yeah, yeah, it's hard. There's a few things. The thing that I think personally drives me in creating these experiences is collaboration. That's something that I really enjoy. Yeah, these are not they're big experiences that they can't just be created by me. I'm not a 3D modeler, for example. I can't create models. So, I've worked with for years, with George Boleyn, who does all the 3D models, right? So it's not just me making these things and then devs to help create and code and sort of the creative behind it, but it takes a team to make it. It's a huge collaboration. It takes like 2 months to make, and it'll work. Need a bunch of people to do it. But beyond that, it's really kind of the artists themselves who create artworks for the events. Everything is stemmed from their creations. So I'll give them a theme, and then they'll go off and create an artwork. And really, that's like the sort of source of inspiration. That's where everything starts, is the artwork itself. So, yeah, I think personally, I'm really driven by the collaboration side of it. I think an audience comes because they are hungry for something different, and we offer that. We offer things that no one else is doing. And they're big events, and they happen. People come for an hour and then do the experience, and then move on to whatever's next. Yeah, so I think it's like that idea of kind of nostalgia, surprise, collaboration, and there's also an element of innovation that we bring into every experience that is always very different. I don't think anyone does what we do with our recent experiences in terms of the interactive minting experiences that we do. These are really, really different, and I think something that's really exciting in this space. So I'm kind of long-winded, random answers, and there's so much going on always.
I mean, I did have a quick look at the sixth edition, and there are, I think there's like 5 different dimensions to the experience. So you can rest assured that if you are participating in the experience, that there's a lot to uncover. And I know you've also worked with some very familiar names within the Tezos space. A quick scan, I saw George Goodwin, or oh my god, I drawed it. Danielle King, Tutu, Mu with the Stan. A lot of people who really built their names within the Tezos arena.
Yeah.
So I know you mentioned that this was like a very collaborative approach, but what was the vetting process, if any, for the artists that you actually wanted to involve? How did you create this list of those that are sort of featured as part of the latest edition?
Yeah, it's quite simple for me when I'm looking for artists, other artists that I can be inspired by. So when I look at the artwork, I go, okay, can I make an experience around that? Does it have something that goes beyond just the artwork itself, but has some kind of meaning, or the artist is kind of able to, take on a theme and create a world. And I think, yeah, at the end of the day, like, we have to create experiences around the artwork. So if you look at someone like let's come up with that. OMG, right? OMG, yeah, like OMG Azure. If I look at his work, which is more the challenging one in terms of edition 6 that we're doing right now, is so specific with the style, but he can't do anything else but his style. Like, I'd love to step into that world, right? I'd love to, like, be in that experience of his artwork. So I think first and foremost, I look at the artist and think, can I create something for them? And that's sort of the starting point. And all these artists, like they all have something different, right? And Xerox, for example, we're not necessarily going to create an artwork, an experience that looks like his artwork. But Xerox is excellent with concepts and ideas and meaning. And, that's something that really inspired me to work with him, is that I know that he'll put a lot of thought behind his artwork, and what we create will connect to that thought and to that kind of process itself. So yeah, I think there's a few things I look for, but I'm not looking at I'm sort of not looking at the top 10 lists. I'm looking at who really would inspire me.
And looking more into the different dimensions of the experience. So I saw there's the minting part, a vending machine, commissions, and there's also the Tezos game, which is something I'm particularly interested in. How are you sort of, I mean, as you said, George Goodwin's work, or OMG, I Drawed It, is very immersive in and of itself. He creates all of these worlds through each individual piece that he's minted. But how are you kind of bridging that into a gaming sort of universe when it relates to his PFP collection, or Tezos specifically?
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun one. So inside the experience, you can play as a Tezos, and you can basically, sort of get inside the experience. So generally, what the experience will be is you'll be kind of immersed in this dark, underground environment. It's large. There's lots of spaces to explore. You're kind of not sure where you're going, so you're kind of following your intuition and then stumbling across these beautiful and kind of amazing little moments. And then in the middle of all that, you basically flip a switch and play a TezTalks game where it's just silly. You have to collect bones, and the top person who scores the most bones wins, kind of thing. But it's fun, like to kind of suddenly play as this kind of dinosaur-looking TezTalks. And it's a nice little throwback and surprise. Obviously, we all have a strong affinity towards. Most of us probably have a strong affinity to the different kind of folklore. So yeah, it's kind of been a delight and a kind of an honor to be able to throw that in there. But given that we're at edition 6 now, which is something that back in 2021 I promised to do. And so it's nice to be able to kind of do some throwbacks to those early times.
And it all sort of bridges back to this notion of delivering a feeling of nostalgia through these digital experiences that we spoke about earlier on in our conversation. Speaking of the 6th edition, I did notice that your theme is 2027 Memento Mori. So I'd love to understand what inspired that theme, but also what about 2027 it is that made you choose that year. Like, why that specificity, I guess?
Yeah, there's a few things that that happened with 2027, which is quite funny. But first of all, there was a tweet that went around a couple months back about Tezos being dead, and Tezos being dead by 2027. And I mean that's just hilarious to me. It's so random and unnecessary and hilarious, and also this is something that I love about the community on Tezos is there's like cancel poll, right? Like if something just doesn't make sense, or something's done badly, or like someone writes a message that is kind of has no bearing on anything. I love that. I love that the community gets together and kind of gets together and comments about it, makes artworks about it, and kind of rallies together in that way. So yeah, 2027 started from that. There's this tweet about Tezos being dead in 2027, and then beyond that, there's so much going on right now. It's a funny time because 2021 when I first started, it was such a boom, it was such a hype. Everyone was jumping on. I was able to finance Here and Now for like a year off the first 2 editions, and then things have got much harder since then, to the point where it's hard to break even, despite a lot of support. So there's also this kind of I suppose personal kind of theme going through there in terms of what does the future hold? Like, what do we think about the future? Where do we see ourselves in 20? And inside the experience, I've got this interactive minting experience, basically, where inside, this journey that you go on, you'll be asked to sort of be confronted with these questions about yourself and you as a collector or you as an artist. Where do you see yourself, in 2027? So if you had to imagine, the experience basically asks you to imagine yourself in 2027. Are you wrecked or did you make it? And then it goes through. I'm not going to give too much flavor. That basically asks you to interact somehow with these questions. And each question that you interact with, you'll kind of be giving. It's going to sound. Bear with me. You're going to be assigning traits to your generative artwork. So say, for example, there's one interaction where you have to blow a balloon, and the more inflated the balloon, the better you feel about the question, the more positive you feel about the question. So if you inflate the balloon to say 70%, then you'll be assigned a trait. So you'll be like 30%, you get a certain trait, and then that will all those traits by the end of the experience, all these questions that you've answered, will go to the emergent properties generator and will essentially mint an artwork for you. So essentially by the end of the experience, you'll have created an artwork based around kind of who you are and who you imagine yourself to be in 2027 and kind of how you're feeling right now about this space, I suppose. So it's kind of a snapshot of, your kind of vision in a way. I'm really excited about this. It's really innovative. It's personal. It's intimate. There's nothing FOMO. There's nothing hype about it. It's just really like I'm hoping that people inside the experience can give a sort of honest account of what they think about the space. And I think that as a collection will be very interesting. That was a side tangent, but yeah, it really it's. I'm really excited by this aspect of the project. It's the thing I'm probably most interested to see what's going to happen.
No, I think that sounds really, really cool, because I think the other thing that it does, beyond sort of defining your personal relationship to this space or to this technology, is, and I guess a little bit ironically against the theme of memento mori, is immortalize a part of that experience and basically give something to people that they can take away with them to forever depict that moment in time or that relationship that they once had. But I think what's also interesting about this space is, because going all the way back to what you were saying at the beginning, Tezos is filled with all of these sorts of interesting juxtapositions. Like when we had something like Art Basel Miami versus something that was, I guess, a little bit more diplomatically call it rustic with TezPol, there's these conflicting narratives that people have about the growth and the potential and the challenge that existed over the last few years. So do you think that we are at a stage where we're coming out the other end of a very difficult period and we're sort of facing this renewed optimism? Or is this something where you're hoping that people who go through the here and now experience will be able to share and illustrate for themselves?
Yeah, it's memento mori essentially means the inevitability of death, right? Um, and I think that can mean so many. Personally, like I don't think I'm not leaving Tezos, right? I'm not like let's saying that the chain's dying. But there is so much negativity that has happened, I think, over the last year, maybe a little bit less than that. And it's so nuanced. There's so much that goes on around this. So there's so much. You can't take a snapshot and understand it completely, right? Because there's so much emotion and finance and that kind of is all mixed together. And also you're throwing that all into like a social media app where people are, just shouting at each other. So it's nuanced and it's difficult. But I do think lately, there's definitely an upswing of things. I'm feeling more positive than I felt in a while. With some of the recently appointed, with Alexandra being appointed head of Beets at True Tech. Moves like that I think are really interesting. I've seen some really great moves, with Object One and Object that are really promising. Because you're really coming back to, I suppose, the community, and at the end of the day, I think that's maybe where things have gone a little bit wrong, where people have spent quite a lot of time and investment on Tezos felt quite forgotten. But yeah, I'm feeling personally quite positive about it. I'm really happy to be wrapping up the sixth edition. I feel like it's a massive achievement, and to me, it's something that I think I'll always be really proud of. As something that I've, completed a roadmap that I made in 2031 that actually materialized. Yeah, I mean, and personally, I'm excited by just, kind of pushing things in a new direction. I think that's, just pivoting a little bit, experimenting a little bit more.
So why is now the right time to end here and now? Like why is the sixth the final edition?
Well, when I say it's the final edition, it's the final edition of these six. Like it's almost like a series is complete. Here and now, time, not very easy way. It's just the final edition. So there will be other things definitely. But they'll probably look a little bit different. As there's some ideas that I want to start experimenting with, and they don't live within the format of these editions. So yeah, I think here now is just going to evolve. I think into doing something a little bit different and similar but different.
Can you share a bit more about what these new avenues of experimentation might actually look like? Like where, what does evolution look like without having to promise or commit to any sort of tentative roadmap? Because God knows there have been so many of those that have never really finished or never completed themselves. So again, congratulations to you for having completed Here and Now's first sort of set. But what are sort of the domains that you really want to start tinkering with and like evolving this into?
Yeah, I'd love to do something IRL. I'd love to take the things that I've learned about Here and Now over these last 3 years and move it into an immersive experience that can tour, which is IRL, but also has a virtual component to it. I think that's something that I'm really fascinated with. Just because the last couple of years, I've spent the majority of my time creating these virtual experiences. I'd love to, get out and see how people interact with, actual kind of IRL experiences, because it's way different. It's a way different way of creating kind of immersive journeys. Because right now, a lot of Q&A experiences are really solitary. Like you experience them by yourself. So I'm really interested in how you get groups of people coming together to experience things that have journeys, but also encourages kind of intimacy. Yeah, I'm like really inspired by sort of immersive theatre projects like Sleep No More, Punch Drunk, and a few other things and some certain films. So bringing those ideas, and even Here and Now, like the sixth editions, very much, very much so have some immersive theatre experience kind of qualities to that. So yeah, I'm excited by bringing it out to the real world.
So a lot of our conversation has generally spanned how your background in immersive experiences and live cinema have translated into this Web3 completely digital realm. But are there any things throughout this entire experience that you feel are going to correspond back to, I guess, your traditional professional career?
Yeah, I mean, I've always kind of, since I was 20, to be honest, make films or create theatre shows or create virtual experiences. So I think that next step that I just mentioned in terms of creating more IRL based experiences is probably the next trajectory for me from a career standpoint. And I'm kind of all in on Web3, and kind of how it can, how things can exist on the blockchain and how you can, the data of it all is very interesting to me. And the collection of things is really interesting to me that can be recorded and that I can have access to, reward people or to understand, people's journeys, through those years is something that I'd love to bring into, IRL experiences. So yeah, I think there's a lot that can be done that people I feel like that's where maybe the least experimentation is happening, is how can blockchain be kind of infused in terms of art with kind of based experiences. Because we live so online that we don't necessarily experiment so much with kind of, the outside world. I think there's a lot of potential there for it.
So seeing how this all, I guess, comes back and goes full circle is where we've yet to connect those final dots. I am very mindful of your time, and I do want to ask one final question, which is for anyone who's really keen to participate in the final edition of Here and Now, what do they need to do? What can they look forward to? And where can they find more information?
But it's basically finished, which is exciting. All you need is the Edition 6 token, which is the coin, which is sort of synonymous with every experience and edition we've done. Each one has the coin. And yeah, so you collect that and you just, show up on the day to on the site that, that will be given on my profile or the website, and log in and you can do the experience. And there's a lot that comes with it, right? There's all the artworks from the artists which you can purchase. And only can purchase if you're a holder. But beyond that, we have commissions with free claims by artists like like Nate Gill and Rose Jackson and a few others. So there's like free art you can claim that you get along with the token, as well as the interactive mints that you get, which is sort of a larger collection that everyone gets, like one-on-one generative art groups. And of course the experience itself, which is worth the admission by itself. So yeah, definitely come by if you want. There's still some tokens left, and yeah, it's really a pleasure to kind of wrap it up and have the sixth one sort of stamp its mark in history on Tezos. I feel like it's a defining moment, and yeah, it's crazy. Like someone from Columbia University is like writing all about this and researching it and kind of recording the history of Here and Now. And it's like, yeah, the idea that this kind of stuff could make it itself into PhDs and live on, and in the education system is really fascinating to me. So, if you want to be part of history.
Yeah, so it's very much about, I guess, the new frontier of immersive digital experiences. And then eventually, past this edition, hopefully we'll see it materialize in offline events as well. Michael, thank you so much for all of your insights today. I thought it was fascinating hearing not only your story, but essentially what you've built over the last 3 years. And I only wish you the best of luck with the event. I'll hopefully buy a token not too long after this and check it out for myself.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks for taking your time to talk.
Great, thank you.